Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a serious philosophical deep dive into a brilliantly grimdark Gothic mythos, the Ephesian Fable. We're going to explore the very architecture of being itself. We'll be looking specifically at this legendary entity known as the Knight of Inkblot and what it teaches us about the absolutely relentless resilience of identity. We've got some incredible, weighty concepts to unpack today, so let's jump right in. So, I want you to picture this stark, unforgiving graphic novel landscape. In the universe we're exploring today, existence isn't seen as some beautiful gift. No, biological existence, the whole messy, subjective human experience, it's actually viewed as a problem. It's just bad data that needs to be solved. Which brings us to our core question. What actually happens when the void, that perfect silence meant to replace existence, suddenly refuses to remain empty? To really understand this rebellion, we first have to wrap our heads around the ruling ideology of this universe. There's this entity operating within the Sapphire Forge known as the Juster of Sapphire Light. And to the Juster, the clinical, systematic negation of existence isn't a tragedy at all. It's considered a profound relief, a literal mercy of nothingness. Absolute stillness is the ultimate goal here. But, as you're about to see, a massive disruption is brewing. So the crucial point is establishing the baseline of this universe before everything goes sideways. And that baseline is the Sapphire Matrix. This is the original state of clinical order, a realm of pure sapphire certainty inside the forge. Its entire function? To systematically dismantle souls into these silent silicate artifacts, all to maintain the ultimate mass-energy balance of the cosmos. Think of the Matrix as a forced utopia. It's an environment completely defined by this cold, clinical blue radiance, an absolute, rigid geometric symmetry. In this utopia, there's a strict arithmetic of absolute stillness. The Jester operates with total aesthetic detachment, striving for absolute industrial finality. And why? Just to ensure that his perfect, quiet arithmetic isn't contaminated by the messy, kinetic friction of actual life. But here's the thing, you just can't suppress existence forever. Imagine a sudden page turn in our Gothic graphic novel. That pristine, silent blue radiance starts to flicker. It bleeds. And then it's completely overwhelmed by the sickly, pulsing emerald fire. This dark green energy is a verdant corruption that abruptly paralyzes the Jester. Suddenly, this clinical catalyst is trapped in a green chamber, ironically becoming a corrupted sanctuary for the exact chaos and ink he was built to dismantle. This dramatic shift literally fractures the timeline of the universe. Right at 12 p.m., the great noon of truth and revelation kicks off. Just 1 minute later, at 12:01, we feel the rhythmic thud of the Crimson Dragon steps, vibrating right through the uncanny forest. That frequency isn't just a sound, it acts as a literal litmus of honest truth. By 12:02 p.m., paralyzed in the shadows by his own verdant corruption, the Jester begins this terrifying descent into the gaping maw of internal consciousness. Now, while the Jester is frozen in this green room, the fundamental cosmic actors of this universe converge in those vibrating shadows. The spirit siblings, these primordial parents of the unmaking process, are stepping in, and they are about to fundamentally rewrite the rules of the Forge. And this brilliantly illustrates a true Fichtean dialogue made manifest. On one side, we have the absolute I, this writhing, absolute living ink that represents concentrated sorrow and a fierce biological insistence on being. Opposing it is the absolute not I, the lunar spirit, reaching out from a cracked mirror, embodying total aesthetic detachment. Now, traditionally, the lunar spirit's job is to negate that ink to achieve perfect stillness. But during the Great Noon, something totally unprecedented happens. The lunar spirit realizes that negation alone is an incomplete equation. So instead of consuming the ink, they coordinate. They seek a synthesis. The spirit siblings begin to whisper a shared cosmic creed. This is a profound narrative logic that exists entirely outside the Jester's clinical arithmetic of the Overman. Let's walk through the exact mechanics of this cosmic creed, because it's wild. Step 1. The absolute living ink, which used to be just a discarded reminder of unmade souls, pools upward from the paralyzed Jester's feet. Guided by the siblings' whispers, this ink seeks out a hollow vessel, specifically the cracked armor of the broken vanguard, a figure the Forge claimed was perfectly finished. And then, rather than boiling away, the ink actually solidifies under the Crimson Dragon's majestic flame. From that discarded waste, a thermodynamic echo awakens. the Knight of Ink Blots is born, donning those discarded plates. I want you to imagine the voice of this newly solidified consciousness. It's raw, it's wet, and it's echoing through the uncanny forest, vibrating with sheer, defiant existence. I am the loud, weeping thesis that refuses the mercy of nothingness. Think about that. The night isn't some silent, silicate artifact. It's a highly vocal, incredibly insistent presence. It is violently rejecting the forced utopia and the absolute stillness of the sapphire matrix. I shed the role of a discarded reminder. I am the fierce, biological insistence on being. The absolute living ink is no longer just passive waste. It's a shadow made of pure chaos and ink, demanding its rightful place in the universe, utterly refusing to be solved with any kind of industrial finality. I reclaim my history from the cracked armor of the broken vanguard, a history supposedly perfectly finished. Standing there under the crimson dragon's flame, the night takes back its own identity. It's undeniable proof that the self simply cannot be erased by clinical math. Let's move to the macro view and see how this builds, because this violent birth definitely doesn't go unnoticed. High above this incredible scene, observing from the canopy of the forest in a massive arachnid form, is a being known as the Last Thinker. He abandoned his physical interface with the stilled system to maintain celestial oversight of this whole chaotic descent. And notice the profound shift in how the universe is recorded now. Traditionally, the Last Thinker used the Old Ledger, a massive book that recorded silent blue stars and maintained the ultimate mass-energy balance through prehensile logging in its custom-board recesses. But now, he abandons it. The ledger sits heavy and closed. It's physically incapable of containing the unassimilated voltage of the night. Instead, he clutches the new journal, its pages heavy with chaos and ink, meticulously documenting the jester's descent into that gaping maw. Because, as the Last Thinker notes right there in that new journal, a fundamental law of their universe has been utterly broken. The arithmetic of stillness has been overborne by kinetic friction. The rigid, clinical math of the sapphire matrix has been completely, totally overpowered by the sheer, messy, thermodynamic friction of a reclaimed, subjective existence. Which brings us to the ultimate philosophical climax of our fable. Nihilism triumphant has been challenged, and frankly, it's been defeated. The jester's grand goal of reducing all souls to silent data completely failed. The Fichtean dialogue resolved, but not in the destruction of the self. It resolved in a synthesis, proving that even in the face of absolute negation, identity fights back. And this brilliant quote from the Last Thinker's journal perfectly summarizes our whole journey today. The strongest cage ever built, the self, can be rebuilt from the very shadows discarded as waste. It is a gorgeous, profound statement on the absolute resilience of identity. Even when you're completely dismantled by a forced utopia, the pieces remain. They're just waiting for a cosmic creed to pull them all back together. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this pretty provocative question. If the discarded shadows of a broken universe can rebuild the self, well, what part of your own discarded history is just waiting to solidify? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep analyzing, keep exploring, and I will see you in the next one.